Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 147th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. I'm doing this video now because it's just this thought that is constantly coming into my mind, so I need to let it out. But it's this idea that is really mind bending that our external reality is just an interface that is created to manipulate inner states of being. And it's really this. Yeah, and maybe I should pause there because honestly, it's something that you really need to sink into your mind. It takes a lot of time to actually process that thought. That what you're doing is just like, imagine if you're a consciousness. Is there an outer reality? How come there is an external reality to your oneness? How can you explain that? I've already said that consciousness sort of rounds and wraps itself around itself, but it's just insane to think of where does that external reality, where does it emerge from? Like, how can you explain that there is an external reality in the first place? And even this distinction between external and internal, it just doesn't make sense, right? But try to put yourself in the shoes of a sort of a brain in a vat, or some kind of consciousness that is aware of its existence, and it's aware that it exists. And as I've said, like, one of the most fundamental things that it exists at is fluctuations in its level of existence, I guess, or in focused attention. That is, some parts of its consciousness end up receiving more of its focused attention than others, and have that subjective feeling of existing more intensely than others, because given its sheer size, this initial consciousness, which is just pure like consciousness attached to existence, can't grasp its entirety, tries to round itself around that void that it is initially, and ends up touching itself and thinking, oh, maybe that's something different from myself. But so it's really, there is no outside reality. What it thinks as being its outside reality is itself. And so it's as if you were so big that you were interacting with your big toe, and like your finger was interacting with your big toe, and you were thinking that the big toe is part of an external perception, when it's just a lag between, like, your consciousness just, there's a lag between the moment it realizes that it is itself and that it's an internal feedback that you're receiving, and not perceiving something external to yourself. But ultimately, like, this process, basically, it's almost like a consciousness is trying to figure out how it should feel about something, or how it should, how can I say this? How to affect, what should affect its internal state, and in which manner. So in this sense, it's really more interesting to think about this idea of an omnipotent, eternal, omniscient, consciousness or intelligence. Well, first of all, there's nothing that's outside of it. How can it be? Like, there's just this one thing that engulfs and encompasses everything. But what about its internal states? And here it's really like, how would it know which internal state it should be in versus another internal state? So if you're a brain in a vat, how would you know if you should feel good or feel bad? How would you know if you should feel cold or feel warm? And so it's almost as if this idea of this initial, like I'm saying, there's these stages where consciousness touches itself, and basically nothingness is the solid state, or zero, where nothing happens and it's still, and infinity is the vaporous state, or even plasma, or something even beyond, like something that is really super bubbly, where everything exists as pure information potential, infinite energy, but without a form because it's just too chaotic, this quantum foam idea. And then in between, like this perfect mean, is the liquid state, where it's almost like the manifestation in space-time of something, of movement, of a focused attention, but which doesn't disappear instantly, or which isn't frozen in this kind of inert state. So it's neither solid nor completely chaotic, vaporous, or whatever. And the initial thing is, okay, I have this attention that I've received, and now I feel that I exist more intensely, and I want to keep that. And this idea of the spin, of like wrapping that around yourself and saying, oop, that's me. This is my kind of vibration, my energy. I want to keep it to myself. Thinking of like, this is like where when you go from sound to light, this idea that you have sound, and then light is just sound that bends around itself in this toroidal fashion, where you wrap sound around yourself and vibration around yourself. You're not in the ocean anymore. You like try to capture a part of that vibration and to be alone with that. But then you're left with only your internal state. You're like a self-contained pocket of light, if you will. And then you're completely disconnected from everything. And then you're like, shit, but I have all this in me, all this attention in me, all this energy inside of myself, all these vibrations inside of myself. But what should its state be? How can I manipulate my own light? What are the parameters that should decide that I should manipulate it by being blue or red or yellow? What should determine that? What frequency should I vibrate at? And the only way you can do that is to create sort of an outer interface, which is just a sort of a holographic projection or symbolic representation of your inner state, in order to navigate different internal states. So again, maybe pause this video here. Just think about this for a while. But as a human, the only thing you're doing when you're roaming about in this reality is navigating internal states of being. That's all you're doing. That is, if you're going towards the fridge to eat something, what you're doing is just upgrading your internal states. And we've created a whole reality here that its only use is to give us a reason to change our internal states in one way versus another. Where an infinite consciousness or a limited being would not know what its internal state should be or priorities, And so when you walk towards the fridge, your internal state, you're just manipulating your internal state to start feeling differently, to give you an objective reason to change the information that is self-contained within you, given certain parameters. Like you're affecting yourself. You're creating an interface for affecting yourself, your inner state of being. Because you don't have any preferences, or it would be just, you need to, if for instance, any single thought you had instantly materialized, that would be a most radical way of changing your inner state just based on whatever you want. But it's quite chaotic in that sense, and your preferences are also, you don't have any at that point. And so as you get up and you walk towards your fridge, your inner state is going to change. Like if you really, really pay attention, you'll feel that the closer you get to the fridge, the more your internal state is going to change with what you would call expectation of eating a fruit, for instance, or eating a chocolate or whatever you're thinking that you're going to find there. And then the moment that you eat something, it's almost like the most radical way of changing your internal state is to use this outer interface for directly kind of ingesting part of what you think is an outer reality to affect your inner state. But ultimately, it's all just a mirror projection. It's as if this initial kind of photon or light or self-contained pocket of light was externalizing part of itself to see it and to manipulate it via that symbolic representation of what is actually in the inside, in its inner body. So when, Alan Watts talks about the fact that the trees and the forests are kind of like our lungs, it's not kind of. It's almost as if every time you move something in your outer reality, what you're really doing is you're manipulating something in your inner reality by using this outer interface to know to have a more granular and precise way of knowing what you're manipulating on the inside, because you can't reach within and do it in that manner, because you don't have eyes looking inwards, or actually you have eyes looking inwards, and that is your own eyes right now. Like the reality you're looking at is you're looking inwards, but you don't know you're looking inwards. And so whenever you displace an object, whenever you do anything in this reality, you're actually just manipulating your inner state of being, and therefore your insides. And so this whole universe is just these interfaces of deeper and deeper manipulation of your inner state of being. It's like light finding ways to manipulate itself at a more subtle and granular level every time. Like, for instance, imagine a young universe where photons or light was actually conscious as light, as just pure light, and it created an interface for interacting with itself on the outside, and that gave you quarks, and that was a way to sort of have an interface or a way of manipulating your insides. Now, obviously, and I know that there's like contradictions between various models that I propose, because but I'm just trying to make this palatable or understandable, because we have a linear mind and we understand things in a linearity, but in actuality is just pure light, and quarks only appear, like it's almost as if light was alive, and then gradually every kind of element that we consider appears in a linear fashion actually appears almost like roots growing in two different directions and things sort of settling gradually, not something that happens linearly. But make an abstraction of that, but just think of this thought experiment of light trying to design an interface on the outside to manipulate its own inner state, to shape light in a certain way or shape its inner state in a certain way. And humans are just a super advanced way of doing that, because ultimately, like think of biology or unicellular organisms as just a very sophisticated mechanism for manipulating their inner pocket of light, and then humans, it's just insanely more complex what we can do in playing with light, basically. But it's all inside out. Like our outer reality is our inner reality, but our inner reality is the outer reality of something else, and so it's just these like nested kind of inner realities for manipulating your inner state of being. I don't know what else I can say here, but just think about that. Think about that whenever you move around in your outer reality. Understand that what you're doing is just changing your inner state and navigating an interface for shifting your inner state, because you can't do it from within. You have to do it from without. Last thing I want to say is, if you have any videos that you'd like me to sort of comment on or analyze, just feel free, because I really enjoy watching Kurt Jaimangel's channel, Theories of Everything. I enjoy listening to Bernardo Kastrup, John Vervaeke, and all these other people. Like many of you, I have no doubt. And obviously I have many things that I like to talk about and that spark my imagination, or that I have something to say about when I watch these videos. It's just that I only have a limited time frame, And maybe if you have a preference, then maybe that's something that I'll focus on in the future. So feel free to let me know if you have any videos that you'd like me to give my feedback on, and talk to you in the next video. And in the meantime, if you have any comments or thoughts about this kind of realization that our external reality is just a way to manipulate our inner states of being, and that's all what it ever was meant for, then feel free to comment, and we can exchange on that idea and play around with it a little bit more. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, the usual, and talk to you in the next video. Bye bye.